Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. This is episode 998, and I'm going to try to do this once a week. I had a couple of audio-only shows, had some technical difficulties, but I'm going to continue pushing to get to 1,000 episodes. But I do have a special announcement that I want to make. I will not have a show next week. I will be up in Atlanta for SEC Media Days. I want to thank DJ Jones and Thrift Behringer of Sports Vision's 92.1 FM in Columbus for allowing me to be a part of the media, as I got the email that said approved. I am excited to be up there with Thrift Behringer, and we are going to do amazing things. We'll have some hits. Hopefully we'll get some interviews, and you could see all that on the Sports Vision's Facebook and YouTube channel. There is a lot going on up in Atlanta next week, including the All-Star game. It's about time. First time since 2000 when it was at Turner Field. Now it's going to be at Truist Park, and it is going to be rocking. Now, Ronald Acuna Jr. is not going to be in the Home Run Derby, but that's okay. He is going to be a starter in the All-Star game. Matt Olson takes his place. Columbus Cleanstone's rookie sensation, J.R. Ritchie, is going to be in the Futures game. There is a lot of storylines, but the big storyline that a lot of people aren't talking about is that Atlanta is hosting the All-Star game. They should have hosted it in 2021. That was pulled because of the voting law, and I hate it when politics mix with sports, and that was not a very wise decision, and that was my opinion. Look, I understand 2021, it would have been a different experience if Atlanta had the All-Star game because we were under COVID protocol, and I think that people would have just missed out on the great experience that the All-Star game is going to be. There is just going to be so much going on up in Atlanta, including a Beyonce concert. It's just so much stuff to do. But we're going to be in downtown Atlanta for 3 days. I believe, Monday. We're going to get up there Monday. And then we're going to be there for Tuesday because Georgia and Auburn are going to be going to the podium. And then on Wednesday, Alabama is going to be going to the podium. So the three colleges in the SEC that we cover in the Columbus area are going to be featured. And that's going to be our main focus. But I do want to know some of the other things that's going on in and around the SEC. Some people are saying that Texas is going to be the favorite. Some people are saying that Georgia is going to be the favorite, and then there's people that say that Alabama is going to be the favorite. Well, I think several dark horses in the SEC that could surprise some people this year. LSU, Garrett Nussmeier looks like a Heisman favorite. This is going to be a year, if Brian Kelly does not make it to the college football playoff, there is going to be a lot of pressure on LSU. You talk about a program that has won 3 national championships with 3 different head coaches. Brian Kelly left Notre Dame to go to LSU, and at the time it seemed like a home run hire. I still believe it is. I still believe that Brian Kelly is going to do a phenomenal job with LSU, and they are going to be a college football playoff contender. LSU starts things off on Monday for SEC Media Days. There are some other teams that I would consider dark horse teams. Florida, they surprised everyone with one of the hardest schedules in the SEC, and yet they were still able to have a winning record and go to a bowl game. And it's due because of DJ Lagway. This is a special dual threat quarterback. He took over midseason last year for Graham Mertz, and I think Florida is going to be the surprise team. I would not be shocked, and I know Georgia fans don't want to hear this because there is so much hate towards Florida, and I totally understand. Florida used to be a team that I just disliked. I didn't like anything about the Urban Meyer, the Tim Tebow years. I just couldn't stand Florida. I want to see Florida relevant again, a top 5 program, because they have the tools, the resources, and I'm a huge fan of Billy Napier. I think that Florida is going to win 10 games. Yeah, I did say it. I know that is shocking. That is a hot take, but DJ Lagway is that special quarterback that's going to get Florida to win some games this year. I believe Florida is going to beat Georgia. This is going to be the year that Florida beats Georgia. Remember how Florida would dominate Georgia under Steve Spurrier in the 90s, and even Ron Zook had a winning record against Georgia. I think somehow, some way, Florida finds a way to beat Georgia this year. But I still think Georgia's going to have a great year. I think they beat Texas. I think they beat Alabama. It's going to be definitely a very good season for the Georgia Bulldogs. I just think they slip up against Florida. Now, when I'm going to be there addressing the media, I'm not going to address that during SEC media days because I'm entitled to my opinion. I am a reporter. I'm a journalist. I'm also a sports broadcaster that believes sometimes you take a hit and you miss, and sometimes you are right on the money. So when we go back to the Georgia-Florida game down the road, and if Florida does win, I could go back to the archives and say, yeah, you remember when I was right? I think that Florida is going to be the dark horse in the SEC. Also, South Carolina, who's on the doorstep of the college football playoff last year, Lenore Sellers is going to be a Heisman contender. So yeah, I'm already doing my research. I think that Vanderbilt is still going to be very good with Diego Pavea. I think that Tennessee drops off because Nico Iamaleava is now at UCLA. And I also think that Ole Miss drops off just slightly because Jackson Dart is now in the NFL. A lot of people are wondering about Auburn, and I'm here to say, relax. I know that Auburn fans want to just crucify Hugh Freeze for playing golf. Meanwhile, their recruiting class for 2026 is 83rd. They still have a very talented team, a lot of players, skilled position players coming over from the transfer portal. They've got Cam Coleman, who I think is going to have a phenomenal year catching the football with Jackson Arnold. I think Jackson Arnold is an upgrade from Peyton Thorne, and that defense, which was good last year, is just going to continue getting better. Remember, their 2 toughest games are at home against Georgia and against Alabama. They still have a very tough road schedule. They have to go to Norman to take on Oklahoma, and they got to go to College Station to take on Texas A&M. Meanwhile, the Georgia Bulldogs, the big question mark is Gunnar Stockton the guy? I think Gunnar Stockton, who was a 5-star recruit, is the guy. He proved it in the SEC championship when he led Georgia to that win against Texas when Carson Beck just couldn't get anything going. I think that Gunnar Stockton is going to be the guy at Georgia, and that's why Georgia's going to be one of the favorites to win the SEC. One thing that's cool about being a media member, part of SEC Days, is I get a vote for the preseason poll. I'm not going to reveal what my vote is going to be, but I am excited that I get to cast this ballot as a member of the media. And I'm also looking forward to meeting all the media members that are going to be there. The one guy that I'm definitely looking forward to meeting, I actually met him last week, so it kind of takes away some of the nerves, is Josh Pate. People that know me, that have done this podcast for 5 years now, know that I look to Josh Pate as somebody that did it the right way. He started in Columbus, and now he is a national sensation when it comes to college football. I'm looking forward to possibly me and Thrift getting an interview with Josh Pate. I'm also looking forward to having Jake Crane possibly as an interview. Jake Crane is going to be there from Crane & Company, along with David Cohn and his brother Blaine Crane. I'm looking forward to meeting that trio because I'm a huge fan of their show. And of course, I'm looking forward to meeting Paul Feinbaum and Laura Rutledge and Heather Dinich and all the major media members, even the local people. I'm looking forward to seeing Jack and Tyler there, Drew and Tony here from WTVM and WRBL. Looking forward to seeing Jordan Hill from Dogs 247. I'm just excited that I get to be a part of something very special. SEC Media Days. It's going to be next week, starting on Monday, July the 14th, and it runs all the way to the 17th. Well, we've got the Major League Baseball season's first half is getting ready to come to a close. The Braves actually did pick up the win against the Cardinals. They got 2 more games, and then it's time for the All-Star game at Truist Park, where even though the game, remember back when the game counted for home field advantage, and the American League would just dominate the All-Star game for years, I don't think people are too much concerned about the game. I like all the festivities about the game, like the celebrity softball game, like the futures game, the home run derby. That's going to be exciting. And then the game itself on Tuesday. There's going to be media members going back and forth from SEC Media Day to the All-Star game. My big takeaway, even though I'm a huge fan of the celebrity softball game, where are the former Atlanta Braves in this softball game? It's like celebrities that are Atlanta-based, like Big Boy and Quavo and the Capital One guy. I don't even know if he's from Atlanta, but I want to see Greg Maddux pitch in this thing. I know it's softball. I want to see Chipper Jones in this thing. I want to see Javi Lopez. You got to respect, like, the Atlanta sports stars in this town needs to be in this celebrity softball game. I want to see Matt Ryan. I definitely want to see Dominique Wilkins. Just when it comes to showcasing, when you're a city that's hosting the All-Star game, you got to let the entire country embrace Atlanta to know, hey, we are in Atlanta, and that's why we got to have Atlanteans in the All-Star game. Not just celebrities, a mixture of some athletes too. But that's just my say on that. All right, let's go ahead, take a break. And when we come back, I got to talk about Caitlin Clark because she did return from injury. And my big takeaway is it's not really moving the needle that much. You don't want to go anywhere. It is the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, and we will be back after this quick commercial break.
Let's see, if something costs less, but people are happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's MediShare. Maybe you've heard switching to MediShare to pay for healthcare can save the typical family $500 a month, and that's huge. But it's also true that people are way more satisfied after making the switch, too. The customer satisfaction rate for MediShare is double that of the typical health insurance plan. Double. MediShare works. It's been around for more than a quarter century, and members have shared more than $3 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So, yeah, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. So if you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan you're happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. Very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. 866-89-BIBLE. That's 866-89-BIBLE. 866-89-BIBLE.
All right, we are back here on the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, episode 998. I will not have a show next week. The week after, I will have 999. The 1000th episode is not going to happen until maybe the end of July or even the beginning of August. There are so many duties and responsibilities that I have at Georgia Alabama Sports Live and Sports Visions 92.1 that I try to make time for this show, but I can only commit to once a week and sometimes even on a Saturday. And that's why you're watching this Saturday night, because this is the only time that I have an opportunity to do a show. I'd stay busy, and I owe it to this show that is giving me the experience to go do other things like Georgia Alabama Sports Live and Sports Visions 92.1, where you can catch Thrift Barringer, DJ Jones, and also myself every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 as Sports Talk Radio in Columbus is back. As finally we have a show in the morning that we could talk sports 5 days a week. And one of the reasons why I love talking local sports, when I started this podcast, I wanted to dedicate it to local sports and have a mixture of talking national sports as well. Not a whole lot of local sports going on. I know that Northern Little League is in the Georgia State tournament. The Phoenix City Little League actually won in Alabama, so they're going to be representing Alabama in the Southeast tournament. Columbus United FC's season wrapped up. They got the win over Apotheos FC the past week. Last time I did this show, it was the day before the 4th of July. I had so many things happen, including my family and I went to a Macon Bacon game. My wife and I went to a Columbus Cleanstones game a couple of days ago. I mean, Joey Chestnut, he's the GOAT. He wins the hot dog eating contest. We had more NBA free agency, and Caitlin Clark returned from injury. And my takeaway on this is that she's going to have to come back and get into a rhythm. She is starting to shoot the ball with that high volume rate, and her field goal percentage is not that great right now. But you have a marquee game that is nationally televised on ABC between the Dallas Wings, who are 6-13, taking on the Indiana Fever, who are 10-10, but Caitlin Clark has missed half the games. But this is what people want to see, and that game is going to get a massive number because it's Paige Beckers going up against Caitlin Clark. Paige Beckers actually has better numbers as a rookie than Caitlin Clark did. But Caitlin Clark is the face of the WNBA, and everybody loves her. I think that Paige Beckers is just as good as Caitlin Clark, or possibly even better. And with all this going on, Angel Reese is flying under the radar and having a great season. Just the Chicago Sky don't have a very good record. This Wings Fever game, they moved to American Airlines Arena in Dallas where they can hold 20,000 fans. It is the Caitlin Clark effect. I thought it kind of wore off when she came back from injury and nobody was really talking about her. And then they ended up picking up the win against the Atlanta Dream. I thought there was going to maybe be a scuffle between her and Ryan Howard or Brittany Griner. That wasn't the case. Just let these players play. Caitlin Clark is a great player, and I understand that half of the audience leaves when she leaves. It's the casual sports fan. They want to see this dynamic player that shoots logo threes. So with that being said, I'm sure that this game is going to get a massive number of every. Caitlin Clark is one of the captains for the WNBA All-Star game, along with Neficia Collier. And Angel Reese actually finally made it to the All-Star game. I actually was going to get on and talk about how she got snubbed, but she is going to make it because of some injuries to some players. So that is going to be great. What else can we talk about? Yeah, the United States, they lose to Mexico in the CONCACAF Gold Cup. Just a year from now, less than a year from now, we're going to have the World Cup. I'm not a fan of the World Cup going from 32 teams to 48. That just waters down the product. NFL training camp is finally here. The Hall of Fame game is going to be July the 31st between the Los Angeles Chargers and the Detroit Lions. I'm excited about the NFL season. We've got more international games, more Friday night games. It seems like the NFL just wants to dominate the headlines. The two most popular sports in this country, hands down, is the NFL and college football. Depending on where you live in the region of the country, obviously in the South, college football is way bigger than the NFL. I don't really know a whole lot of Falcons fans in Georgia. There are some Falcons fans, but there are way more Georgia and Auburn fans by far. When I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, I was a San Francisco 49er fan. A lot of my classmates in school were Raiders fans as well. Those were the two most popular teams, were the 49ers and the Raiders, living in Northern California. I don't say the same thing about college football in California because nobody really cared about Cal and Stanford unless you went to the school. But I thought that the exception was, especially in the 2000s when they were a dynasty, was USC, because there was not an NFL team in Los Angeles. That's why there were a lot of USC fans. What I'm going to do is, this is not really going to be a preview show for the 2025 NFL season. I'm just going to recap the record of the team and how they did in 2024, and I'm going to say higher or lower. Is their record going to be higher or lower? And there might even be some teams that I'll say they're the same. They'll have the same record. Nothing's changed. All right, let's go ahead and start with the Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. They went 14-3 last year. Now they have a first place schedule. They have a brutal schedule, and they lost a few pieces on defense. But they still have Saquon Barkley. They still have Jalen Hurts. They still have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert. They have the best offensive line in all of football. But I think they take a step back. I think their record is going to be lower than 14-3. Let's talk the Super Bowl runners-up, the Kansas City Chiefs. They were getting ready to three-peat. You have Patrick Mahomes. Travis Kelce's getting up there in age. You still have one of the best edge rushers in all of football when it comes to being a clutch edge rusher in Chris Jones. But I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to have a record that is lower. They went 15-2 last year. They're going to have a lower record because their division is even tougher. You know, the Chargers and the Broncos made the playoffs last year, but with the improvement of the Las Vegas Raiders, with Pete Carroll, and you've got Geno Smith, Alshon Jeffrey, Brock Bowers is probably the best tight end in all of football. I think that the Kansas City Chiefs, still a playoff team, but that AFC is stacked. Joe Burrow's going to be back. Lamar Jackson's got something to prove. I think that the Kansas City Chiefs take a step back, so their record is going to be lower. Now, let's talk about the Washington Commanders. The Commanders had just a historic season last year, getting to the NFC Championship. First time since 1991. Jalen Daniels is a phenomenal athlete. They've added Deebo Samuel, but I think that they are going to have a lower record than they had last year with the 12-5 record. And I don't think it's because they're not as good as last year. I just think that they're playing a little bit tougher schedule, and people have film on them, and they got film on Jaden Daniels. And I think that teams are going to actually look at Washington on the schedule, and they're going to show up and show out. I do think that the addition of Deebo Samuel makes their team a little bit more dynamic. So I got them with a lower record. All right, how about over in the AFC, the Buffalo Bills, 13-4 last year. They went to the AFC Championship. Josh Allen is the reigning MVP. I think they're going to stay the same. The Buffalo Bills are my favorites to win it all next year. I think that Josh Allen is the best quarterback in the NFL. It's not a disrespect to Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen has proven that he can carry a team. It's just that Patrick Mahomes has that clutch gene, especially in the fourth quarter. And, you know, when I look back at that AFC Championship, I know that has got to be hanging over Josh Allen's head, thinking about what if, because I thought that the Buffalo Bills had a shot at that AFC Championship. So I got them the same record. All right, those were the conference champions. Those were the runners-up in the conference as well. But now I'm going to talk about the teams that made the playoffs last year. Because remember, half of the teams don't make the playoffs from the year before. Here's a team that had the best record in the NFC. I think they take a huge step back. The Detroit Lions that went 15-2. Folks, they're not going 15-2 this year. Ben Johnson is now the head coach in Chicago. They lost their defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn. When you lose your two coordinators, you saw what happened with the Eagles a couple of years ago when they lost Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon. They were not the same team. The Detroit Lions is going to be a much different team. Still good, still a playoff team, but definitely not 15-2. All right, the other team, the Minnesota Vikings, they went 14-3 last year. Sam Darnold is now in Seattle. This is going to be the year. Can J.J. McCarthy be the guy? Because Kevin O'Connell is putting all his eggs in one basket saying that J.J. McCarthy is the guy. They still have the best receiver in all of football, Justin Jefferson. They have a very good defense, with Brian Flores. I think that the Minnesota Vikings are going to take a step back. I think that this division, the NFC North, is going to be tighter than ever. And let's go ahead and talk Green Bay. 11-6. They made the playoffs last year. I think they're going to go up. They are going to be much higher. Jordan Love, he's got Jonathan Jacobs. He's got those young receivers as well. And even though they lost Jair Alexander, I still think the Green Bay Packers are going to be better than they were last year. And then the team that's probably going to improve the most, possibly could go 8-9, 9-8, is the Chicago Bears. I think that Caleb Williams, under Ben Johnson, is going to have a phenomenal season, much more improved than last year under Matt Eberflus. And let's go NFC West. Last year, the Rams were the only team that made the playoffs. They went 10-7. They were tied with the Seattle Seahawks. The Rams were a play away from playing in the NFC Championship. You look at this team, Matthew Stafford is still getting older, but they have added Devontae Adams. There's no Cooper Kupp, but he was older. So they're kind of just trading off pieces. The Rams still have Sean McVay. They still have a young defense. Jared Verse, who's really taken over as could be one of the top defensive linemen in all of football when it's all said and done. I think the Rams are a playoff team, and I think their record goes slightly up. The Seattle Seahawks, I think, slightly go down because I know that Geno Smith did a great job running this offense. Now Sam Darnold is running this offense. They don't have DK Metcalf, but they have Cooper Kupp. I like Kenneth Walker, but I just don't think that defense is what it used to be with the Legion of Boom. They're a big question mark, but I think Seattle stays about the same, maybe 9-8, possibly 10-7. Arizona went 8-9 last year. I do think that they improve a little bit, 9-8, and then the team that went 6-11 last year, that a lot of people think that the sky is falling because they gave Brock Purdy that big contract, and they lost Dre Greenlaw, they lost Talona Hufanga, they lost Leonard Floyd, and they lost Deebo Samuel. This was not a 6-11 team last year, and they have one of the easiest schedules in football. There's a big if Christian McCaffrey comes back fully healthy, Brandon Ayuk comes back fully healthy, the 49ers will be about a 9-8, 10-7 team, borderline playoff team, and they could possibly compete for the division. And that's with Brock Purdy and not having Deebo Samuel. And if he has a team that's fully healthy, the key for the 49ers is Trent Williams. If Trent Williams is injured at all this season, Brock Purdy's going to be mediocre. That is what makes Brock Purdy a Pro Bowl quarterback, is if he has a security blanket, Trent Williams protecting his blind spot. Now, that defensive line is young with Mykel Williams from Columbus, Georgia. Big shout out to the Hardaway Hawk, who is going to be on the opposite side of that defensive line with Nick Bosa. Fred Warner, he got a contract extension. He is the leader of the defense. The big question mark for the 49ers is the secondary. I just don't think the secondary are Pro Bowl level type of players. Deommodore Lenoir is good, but he's not a superstar. And I think losing Charvarius Ward was a huge loss for the San Francisco 49ers. Let's go over to the NFC East, where we had two non-playoff teams that did not make it. The Dallas Cowboys went 7-10. A lot of people think that they are going to be about the same. Mike McCarthy is out. He is not the head coach. It's Brian Schottenheimer. That is really not that much of an upgrade. And I just don't think, even with George Pickens being like the number 2 receiver to CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, he's got to stay healthy in order for that defense to be good. I still think that they lost some pieces, and Dak Prescott has got to have everything run right. And the Dallas Cowboys running back was Rico Dowdle. I think that if they can get some consistency in their running game, they still have question marks on that offensive line. I still think they're about a 7-10, 8-9 team. The New York Giants, they went 3-14 last year. they can only go up, right? They did draft Jackson Dart as the quarterback of the future, but they got a very crowded quarterback room with Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, Tommy DeVito. But the New York Giants have Malik Neighbors, who's a very good wide receiver. I'll tell you what, Brian Dable, even though he's on the hot seat, I still think he's a good coach. I think the Giants will improve. They might go 6-11. We'll say 6-11. All right, finally, the NFC South. Falcons fans, I know this is the big question mark. They got an easy schedule. The Buccaneers won this division last year, but the Falcons should have won it because they defeated the Buccaneers twice and they had a 2-game lead on the Buccaneers. But I still think it's going to be a battle between the Falcons and the Buccaneers to win this division. The Atlanta Falcons have not made the playoffs since 2017. They are going to feel the loss of Grady Jarrett. I think that is a huge loss on the defensive line. I do like Jalen Walker. James Pierce is a big wild card. I'm not sure what an impact he is going to have, but I think that Jalen Walker is going to have an impact as a rookie. The offensive pieces are in place. Michael Penix Jr. is set up for success, but I want to see Kyle Pitts be that top 5 tight end that we all thought he was going to be. If that ever happens, that offense, led by their offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson, is going to be dynamic. But in order for the Falcons to have a good season, they can't blow leads and they can't lose games like Kirk Cousins did when he was injured, and they ended up losing those games right at the last minute. They had a chance to get in the playoffs last year. This year, 8-9, and no, it wasn't 7-10. They did improve from those 7-10 years that they had with Arthur Smith. But the Atlanta Falcons, I see them going at least 11-6, 12-5. It's because they have an easy schedule. This is the year where if they don't make the playoffs, just blow it all up. Fire Terry Fontenot, fire Raheem Morris. It's just nothing's working. This franchise is cursed. If they don't make the playoffs with this roster and that schedule, this franchise is cursed since 28-3. And I'm sorry to say that, Falcons fans. I know that I'm going to be getting hate mail from Falcons fans just even thinking that. But I want to see the Falcons do good. I want to see them make the playoffs, and it is about time. This is a winnable division. The Buccaneers have improved a little bit. Baker Mayfield clearly is the guy. They got a great defense, and they should have no problem with Carolina and New Orleans, who are not going to be very good this year. They both finished 5-12 last year. I think that that's going to be their record this year. All right. I actually touched up on all the teams in the NFC. I want to go to all the remaining teams in the AFC. I did talk about the conference appearance in the AFC conference. I did talk about Buffalo and Kansas City, but let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. 12-5, heartbreaking loss to Buffalo in the divisional round last year. They did win the division. Lamar Jackson there's so much pressure on him to win, especially when they got Derrick Henry. But, they got Jair Alexander. They got Roquan Smith. They got Patrick Queen. They have got players on that defense. The Ravens have always prided themselves on defense, but it's Lamar Jackson with Rashad Bateman, with Isaiah Likely, who's starting to become a Pro Bowl tight end. They got a great offensive line, and when you have Derrick Henry in the backfield, I know he's getting up there in age. I think that the Baltimore Ravens are the favorites, or one of the favorites. I got Buffalo winning the Super Bowl. I think that Baltimore could be in the conference championship. That's why I think that the Chiefs drop off a little bit, because I think Buffalo and Baltimore are going to be much improved. All right, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they went 10-7. I don't know how they went 10-7. They had Justin Fields. They had Russell Wilson. What was going on? And the Pittsburgh Steelers with Aaron Rodgers are not going to be 10-7. I'm sorry. They're going to be 9-8 or 8-9. Aaron Rodgers does not give you an upgrade at quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is a shell of himself when he was in Green Bay. This will be his final year. I know he's got something to prove, but the Steelers didn't really improve. I know they got Jalen Ramsey. They traded away Mika Fitzpatrick. They got Jonnu Smith. They've got DK Metcalf, but Najee Harris is now with the Chargers. I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers actually regress. The Cincinnati Bengals went 9-8. I think they're going to be much better, even though there's still question marks on that defense, that Joe Burrow is going to have just a phenomenal year with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I mean, you talk about a two wide receiver tandem. Joe Burrow is always going to be in games with those two wide receivers. And the Cincinnati Bengals will improve from their 9-8 record last year. The Cleveland Browns, they might end up being the worst team in football. They are just a circus. They've got 5 quarterbacks in the quarterback room, and they are not very good. And if Myles Garrett goes down, they will be terrible. At least Myles Garrett gives you a pass rush, which is maybe worth a point in football. But I do think they improved their record from 3-14. And that's not really saying much. All right, let's go to the AFC East. We already talked about Buffalo. I got them winning it all. Miami, this is going to be the year Mike McDaniel is going to be on the hot seat if Miami does not move the needle and at least contend for the playoffs. They went 8-9 last year. Look, Tua does his thing. He's not a superstar quarterback, but he runs Mike McDaniel's offense just fine. I think the Dolphins are going to be fine, but if Tyreek Hill gets disgruntled and he wants out, this thing could blow up fast. But I still think the Miami Dolphins will be about the same record. New York Jets, I think they're going to be worse. 5-12 last year with Aaron Rodgers. They got a new head coach in Aaron Glenn, but Justin Fields is now the quarterback. And do you really think Justin Fields is going to win games for the New York Jets? The team that's going to be the most improved team in the National Football League is the New England Patriots. Mike Vrabel, new head coach. You got Josh McDaniels, who's the offensive coordinator, and Drake May is the Patriots quarterback. They made moves in the offseason. I think the Patriots, they're not going to win this division, but they're going to go 9-8. I think that is a huge upgrade to get Mike Vrabel as their head coach. And then finally, let's talk about the AFC West. I kind of touched up on the AFC West a little bit. Kansas City, obviously probably going to lose to Baltimore or Buffalo in the divisional round. The Chargers are going to be a playoff team. They're going to be about 12-5. They went 11-6 last year. Denver, they're going to be a playoff team as well. Bo Nix is definitely the quarterback for the Denver Broncos, and they have a very good defense. The Raiders are going to be improved. I think they go 7-10, 8-9, because Pete Carroll is just that guy that can be a culture setter. And Ashton Genty is going to have a great year. Brock Bowers is going to have a great year. I like the upgrade with Geno Smith at quarterback. That's actually a pretty good change in quarterback from Derek Carr, who just wanted out of Vegas. And now you got Geno Smith and Max Crosby, who got the bag. He is one of the best defensive end. They all can't be the best defensive end in football, but he's definitely a top 10 defensive end in football. The Raiders have some good pieces, and they're going to win some games. And finally, I didn't want to leave out the AFC South, because the Houston Texans won this division last year at 10-7. This is really a wild card here. I still think the Houston Texans are the favorite because I like C.J. Stroud, even though he regressed slightly. But this is a winnable division. Tennessee's going to be a little bit improved with Cam Ward. Jacksonville is going to be a little improved with Travis Hunter. I think that Jacksonville, who went 4-13 last year, are going to win some games because this is a winnable division. I think the Colts are in bad shape. I don't know if Anthony Richardson is going to be the quarterback. They went 8-9 last year. I think that they probably go 6-11. But Jacksonville and Tennessee are definitely going to be 5-12, 6-11. They'll improve by a couple of games. Tennessee might even go 8-9, but I think the Houston Texans win this division. That was kind of my NFL preview in 20 minutes. I just am excited about the National Football League. I know that when we get to football and I break down games as far as NFL, college football, high school football, I mean, it's going to come at you hot and heavy. I mean, that's what I do here on this show. This has actually been a little bit longer show than I anticipated, but I do want to say thank you to my viewers on Facebook and on YouTube. We are almost to the finish line. I'm not going to say finish line because that just means I'm going to stop when I have my 1,000th episode. No, we are almost to 1,000 episodes. One more episode before episode 1,000. There is a guest that he asked if he could come on my 1,000th episode. That's why I'm kind of pacing myself because I want to honor that commitment. So I won't have a show next week because it is SEC Media Days. I will have a show in 2 weeks. That will be episode 999. And then my 1,000th episode, I'm actually going to have it the week of July the 28th through August the 1st. So I don't know when it's going to happen that week. I try to do a show once a week. When football season comes around, I might do 2 shows a week. But thank you so much for watching another episode of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. Have a great night, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.